In my last video, I ended my ranking of people with the most land named after them with this. Of course, if we're allowing people from Greek mythology like Europa and Asia, and we are willing to turn the clock back a little bit, then really, the person with the most land named after them would have to be Gaia, the Greek goddess of the earth, since Pangaea's name of all the earth comes from her. Of course, multiple commenters were quick to point out Gaia is not the only deity to have something to this scale named after them. Why should we confine ourselves to Earth when almost all the other planets in the solar system are named after gods in the Roman pantheon? If you want to find out why we named all the planets after Roman gods, let's go back in time a little bit. Not to ancient Rome, but to ancient Babylon. The first planet humans discovered was probably the Earth, since we're on it. We probably discovered the sun and the moon a few seconds later, since they're pretty hard to miss. While we today consider the Earth a planet and the sun and moon not, for the ancient Babylonians it was quite the opposite. They defined a planet as the stuff moving around in the sky, which the sun and the moon do all the time, but the Earth only really does if you're an astronaut, doing a backflip, and or really drunk. A bit harder to discover, but still quite doable for the Babylonians, is figuring out that the farther away planets are not in fact stars, but planets. The Babylonians had 7 classical planets: Sin, the moon; Shamash, the sun; Merodach, Jupiter; Ishtar, Venus; Ninip, Saturn; Nebo, Mercury; and Nergal, Mars. Those of you who know your Babylonian mythology might realize that these are also names of the corresponding gods in the Babylonian pantheon. And if you're real clever, you might realize these are actually also corresponding pretty well to the Roman gods for whom we name the planets today. This is not a coincidence. Take, for example, Ishtar, the Babylonian goddess of war, love, fertility, and the planet Venus. She became the Ugaritic Ashtart and the Phoenician Astarte, who in turn had a great influence on the Greek Aphrodite, who then had a very important influence on the Roman Venus, carrying with her the connection to the planet that the Romans thusly called Venus. If you want to find out more on this topic, I cannot recommend enough this video by Overly Sarcastic Productions. While the rest of the planets do not trace such a direct line of influence, we can see that the Romans assigned whatever god was most similar to the ones the Babylonians had given them. Oh, hello kitty. Say hi to my cat, guys. Alright, where were we? The Romans assigned the planets the names of the gods that were most similar to the ones the Babylonians had given it, like King of the Gods, King of the Gods; God of Agriculture, God of Agriculture; God of Knowing Stuff, God of Knowing Stuff; God of War, God of War. God of War, God of War. Astronomers didn't really discover anything new for the next few thousand years, so let's skip ahead to the 1600s with the invention of the telescope. Galileo Galilei modified this newfangled invention and used it to look at Jupiter, discovering its 4 biggest satellites that we now call the Galilean moons. He didn't immediately realize they were moons, instead thinking they were stars, and thus named them the Medicean stars. At the same time, this guy named Simon Marius claimed to have discovered these as well, and proposed they be called the Saturn of Jupiter, the Jupiter of Jupiter, the Venus of Jupiter, and the Mercury of Jupiter. For some reason, this just didn't catch on. Johannes Kepler then suggested they be named after the mythological lovers of Jupiter: Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. These names ended up sticking, so now Europa doesn't just have a continent of Europe named after her, but also the Jovian moon Europa. The next actual planet to be discovered was Uranus. Most astronomers insist on calling it Uranus, but if they didn't want me to call it Uranus, they shouldn't have called it Uranus. Though, the real person at fault was not Uranus' discoverer, William Herschel, but instead Johann Elert Bode. You see, Herschel wanted to name his discovery after his patron, King George III. You may have been told by some people, including me in the thumbnail of this very video, that Herschel originally named it George. This is not completely true. The name he proposed was Georgium Sidus, Latin for George's star. Herschel didn't want to name the planet for a Roman god because, in his words, in the fabulous ages of ancient times, the appellations of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn were given to the planets, as being the names of their principal heroes and divinities. In the present, more philosophical era, it would hardly be allowable to have recourse to the same method, and call it Juno, Pallas, Apollo, or Minerva. If in any future age it should be asked when this last found planet was discovered, it would be a very satisfactory answer to say in the reign of King George III. But basically no one liked the name, and many others were proposed, including Herschel, Australia, Cybele, Neptune, and my personal favorites, Neptune King George III and Neptune Great Britain. Johann Elert Bode proposed Uranus, the Latinization of the Greek Uranus, god of the sky. It is unknown why Bode picked the Greek Uranus instead of his Roman equivalent Kylus. Martin Klaproth, Bode's colleague, actually named the element he discovered uranium in support of this name for the planet. It stuck, making Uranus the only planet named after a Greek god. Fun fact, the moons of Uranus are not named after characters from Greek and Roman mythology, but instead characters from Shakespeare plays, like Titania and Oberon. Astronomers then discovered 6 new planets: Ceres, Pallas, Juno, Vesta, Astraea, and Neptune. That brought the total number of planets to 13. But in 1851, they demoted all the weird ones to asteroids. For some reason, the Pluto people are awful quiet about bringing back these planets too. But what about Neptune? Why is it called that? Well, believe it or not, it's actually named after the Roman god Neptune, because of its dark blue color. Though, when Voyager 2 flew past Neptune in 1989, we found out that Neptune is actually light blue, like Uranus. In 1930, at Lowell Observatory, Pluto was discovered by Clyde Tombaugh. Lowell Observatory had 3 main names in mind for it: Minerva, Pluto, and Cronus, all 3 keeping with the mythological precedent of the other planets. Minerva was decided against because it was already the name of an asteroid, and Cronus was thrown out because no one liked the guy who had suggested it. No, I'm serious. And thus Pluto became Pluto, the 9th planet. And then in 2006, the IAU created the designation dwarf planet in order to demote it. So I think we need to figure out, what is a planet? For most of history, the planets were the stuff zipping around the sky, so it didn't include Earth and didn't include the sun and the moon. In fact, the word planet comes from the Greek planetes for wanderer. Then, when we discovered how orbits work, we defined a planet as stuff orbiting the sun. But then we discovered thousands of smaller objects orbiting the sun between Mars and Jupiter, so we demoted them to asteroids. And then we discovered a bunch of stuff in the Kuiper Belt that we demoted to dwarf planets. The modern IAU definition for planet is that it 1. Orbits the sun, 2. Has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to form a nearly round shape, aka hydrostatic equilibrium, and 3. Has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. This definition has the same problem as the definitions we saw for continent in my other video, that the definition was specially crafted in order to fit what we already believed was a planet, instead of having a definition and finding stuff that fit it. But anyways, let's look at the sizes of the planets and planetoids to see who's really got the most stuff named after them. We'll start with Pluto, with a diameter of 0.187 that of Earth. And then we've got Triton, Europa, the Moon, Io, Callisto, Mercury, Titan, Ganymede, Mars, Venus with a diameter of 0.9499 that of Earth, Earth with a diameter of 1 Earth diameter, Neptune at 3.865, Uranus at 3.981, Saturn at 9.140, and Jupiter with a diameter 10.97 times that of Earth. Of course, we can't just stop at Jupiter. There's other planets out there in the universe, and they can get even bigger. Let's take a look at some exoplanets. We can start with Jupiter with a diameter 1 times that of Jupiter. And then we've got Kepler 90H with a diameter of 1.0037 times that of Jupiter. Then Osiris at 1.359. Asia, an Earth goddess in Akan mythology, at 1.428. Najsakopajik, I don't know, but it's Mother Earth in the Zoc language at 1.44 Jupiter diameters. Kepler 7b at 1.622. Kepler 435b at 1.99. And V2376 Orionis b at 7.78, a possible brown dwarf. But even in our solar system, we have something larger than V2376 Uranus b, the Sun, and there are some people with far bigger stars named after them. Like, for example, Regulus at 4.16 solar diameters, Pollux at 9.06, Plaskett star at 14.2, Suhail at 211, Mothra at 271, Betelgeuse at 640. And no, it's not named after Betelgeuse, but instead after the Arabic Yad al-Jawza for the Hand of Orion. Then we've got Stephenson 2 DFK 3 at 970 solar diameters, and S Persei at 1,364 solar diameters. So, I suppose Perseus wins. Well, he would if stars were as big as things got. Some other stuff includes the Kuiper Belt at 100 astronomical units, or the orbit of the Earth, the Oort cloud at 100,000 astronomical units, Kepler's supernova remnant at 14 light years, the Orion Nebula at 20 light years, Barnard's Loop at 300 light years, and the Gum Nebula at 809 light years. Well, congratulations, Colin Stanley Gum. If it weren't for the existence of galaxies, you would have won. Speaking of galaxies, did you know that the word galaxy comes from the Greek galaxias kyklos, for milky circle, for the milky band of stars across the sky that we still call the Milky Way? In Greek mythology, the Milky Way was created when Hera was breastfeeding Heracles, and he bit down too hard and she pushed him away, and the resulting spurting milk became the Milky Way. If aliens ever come visit, they would probably think us pretty weird for naming our galaxy, and every other galaxy, after milk. Maybe that's why they don't visit. Anyway, let's look at some galaxies. We've got the Large Magellanic Cloud at 32,500 light years, the Milky Way at 87,400 light years, Malin 1 at 118,700 light years, our nearby Andromeda Galaxy at 152,300 light years, Holmberg 15A at 390,570 light years, Hercules A at 459,800 light years, Abel S 235 BCG at 700,900 light years, Abel 1413 BCG at 801,400 light years, Abel 1146 BCG at 1,009,000 light years, and Abel 3039 BCGB at 1,290,000 light years. But it can get even bigger, like with the Perseus-Pegasus filament at 1 billion light years, or the King Ghidorah supercluster at 1,300,000,000 light years, or the KBC Void at 2 billion light years, or the Claus Camposano Large Quasar Group at 2 billion light years, or the Hercules Corona Borealis Great Wall, this absolutely massive galaxy filament that is 9,700,000,000 light years long, 10% of the width of the entire observable universe. This thing is by far the largest structure there is, putting Hercules as the guy with the most stuff named after him. The Hercules Corona Borealis Great Wall was not actually given its name by its discoverers, and it was instead coined by Jondrick Valdez, a Filipino teenager from Marikina on Wikipedia. If I was him, I would have called it the Jondrick Wall, but that probably wouldn't have caught on as well. What about relative size? The Hercules Corona Borealis Great Wall is so big that it takes up 15,000 square degrees, 36% of the sky, absolutely destroying the sun and the moon that each take up roughly 0.2 square degrees. It is beaten by the Earth, which at any given time takes up 50% of your field of view, or 20,626 square degrees. Of course, whenever you close your eyes, you take up 100% of your field of view, the biggest relative size of anything in the universe. On that note, have a nice day.